how do I know when to fire somebody, and then how do I do it?
Well, the better question is, how have I been fired? Because I've gotten fired too, even from my own companies. You should be thinking about it's so individual. I think that there's a misconception or a mistake that is often made. Don't think about because we're so caught in our tunnel sometimes.
We are joined by Dave Sifry, a veteran software entrepreneur whose current venture, Warmstart.ai, is solving a challenge many businesses face: how to know when it's time to fire somebody, and how to handle that conversation with clarity and compassion. So today on How Do I, we are joined by Dave Sifry, a veteran software entrepreneur whose current venture, Warmstart.ai, is solving a challenge many businesses face: how do you get more business as efficiently as possible? With his AI-powered platform, Dave helps professionals transform cold outreach into warm, personalized engagement by leveraging their existing relationships. As the founder of Technorati and leader of multiple successful tech companies, Dave brings decades of executive experience to today's difficult but essential topic: how to know when it's time to fire somebody, and how to handle that conversation with clarity and compassion. Drawing from his experience building and managing diverse teams, Dave offers practical insights on making these tough decisions while maintaining both business effectiveness and human dignity. Dave, we're talking about firing people. This is huge. Tell me a bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, first off, I mean, this is one of those really difficult things that no one likes to do. I have not met a single person who ever enjoyed or liked to fire someone, and yet I've never met someone who fired someone too early.
Yeah, yep. I'm in that boat. How many people do you think you fired?
The better question is, how have I been fired? Because I've gotten fired too, even from my own companies. There,
Oh, really?
Ooh, yeah. So like learning how to do this right and learning how to do it compassionately and clearly and legally, that is an incredibly important piece, is actually in some ways a gift. So not only is it a gift to the company, because obviously the company now can get to move on and you're working without the kind of conflict or performance issues that you've had, but in a way it's also about helping the employee understand that this isn't the right fit. And maybe there's a better fit for them somewhere else. And it's about doing it with dignity and doing it with, ability where you can keep a decent relationship in the best case. It doesn't always happen. But I have unfortunately had the dubious privilege of having to do this dozens of times.
Got it. Well, Dave, how do I know when to fire somebody, and then how do I do it?
Ooh, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, Matt. Just for you and for your listeners, I put together a really quick little presentation
that's so awesome.
that I'm happy to show. How to fire an employee. And I know that this is a difficult subject, so let's at least have.
I love it.
So I think the first thing to look for is, what are the red flags that show up? And there's a few different key red flags that I've identified and that I keep an eye out for. So obviously the first one is performance. Are they missing deadlines? What's the quality of the work like? Are there errors or, declining quality of work? Second is you want to be looking at behavioral issues. Are they engaged at work, or are they somehow now all of a sudden disengaged? Like, are they getting negative and complaining? Are they always like leaning back instead of leaning forward? Some of the bigger ones, are you seeing insubordination, poor collaboration? And then, of course, there's the super big red flags, right? Is there harassment? There are certain things that are absolutely just unacceptable in any workplace.
Yeah. I feel like the behavioral stuff can sometimes be harder to catch in a remote first.
Some of this is how well that you can document things. I have learned that what I really look for is results, and I look for attitudes and value compliance, in terms of like the values that we have. So honestly, if you're doing the work that I'm giving you and you can get it done in 4 hours a day and you can go off and play pickleball all day, honestly, why should that matter to me?
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's actually something that I love talking about with remote employees right from the beginning. And by the way, I think every employee is a remote employee. Like this whole go back to the office thing is. That's a whole other aside. But you know what? More folks for people like me to be able to hire,
100%.
right? To me, the whole office work situation with some really obvious caveats. It's actually generally a failure of leadership, in my experience. So you should be able to do this and allow people to live where they live and do what they do, but you should be expecting and holding people accountable to the results and to the work product that they're actually delivering, and are they collaborating as a team.
Got it.
So, you want to be looking for those kinds of accountability things, like are they blaming others? Are they making excuses, right? Are they not taking ownership for stuff like that? And then, of course, there's something that I could broadly fit into cultural fit, the idea of like the values that they are espousing. Are they lying to customers, right? Like those are some of the things that like, boom, that will immediately get a conversation with me. And I know that isn't always... not every company has that, right? Lots of used cars salespeople who get plenty of jobs. But, for me, there are certain kinds of ways that I expect that we not only treat our customers, we treat our partners, we treat our vendors, and we treat each other as teammates.
Okay.
What should you be doing about this, right? So ideally, you want to be keeping things written down. So noticing when things are happening, keeping a journal of what's going on, using kind of like a 3 strikes model is a really good one. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about how to address some of those performance issues in a minute. Okay. Again, aside for some of the really bright line issues, and you'll know them when you see them in general, having a sit down, letting them know, hey, this is unacceptable, this is what you did, right? Or this is what I heard, so on and so forth. Like, we need to have a talk about this. This is what you need to improve. And then, just keeping an eye out over time. Like, what's that trajectory like? Are they actually making improvements? Even despite a number of times that I have clearly stated expectations, it's not working out.
Do
right?
you
it's not improving.
imagine that if you were to sit down with people and have, like, hey, we saw this and this happened on whatever day. Do you imagine that if you have those conversations more regularly, that termination conversation is easier?
Yes.
Okay.
It always is, because then they know what's coming.
Okay.
Sometimes what I'm expecting, because I'm a pretty demanding boss.
Sure.
Like, sometimes what I'm expecting, the person, because of time of life or, other kinds of reasons, like they just can't meet that level of expectations. It's totally okay.
Okay in what way? Okay as in they're still with you, or okay as in they need you?
No, it's okay as in like, it's okay that this isn't a good fit.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, cool. Those conversations themselves feel a bit uncomfortable even when I just think about having them. It's kind of like less pain than firing somebody, but if you have a little bit of pain a little more regularly, terminating is way, way easier, maybe?
Oh my God, totally. Okay. Again, don't think of this as a termination conversation to start with. Yeah. It's really about, like, what is my job as the leader in this organization, whether I'm the senior most leader or whether I'm, in the middle of the organization or I'm a frontline leader. Like, again, by the way, I talk about leadership rather than management, especially around these kinds of topics, because I think that you really need to recognize that I've never met a single person who likes being managed. And yet, all of us need leaders. All need leaders.
That's cool.
We need people who are going to be examples. We need people who are going to show us what the right things to do. We need people who are going to coach us on the best way to do it. And we need people who are going to hold our feet to the fire to make sure that we're actually delivering to the clear expectations that have been set. And if I'm not being clear, then the problem isn't with you. The problem is actually with me.
Yeah, I'm like looking at my own life and I'm going, I gotta level up again here. Okay, thank you.
So now, if you've seen the red flags, like how do you actually address some of these issues, right? So we should be talking about what is a plan to actually improve. So being clear, right? Being specific, having measurable goals, right? I'm sure you've heard about things, SMART goals, and don't. Now I always get them wrong, right? Like, what is it? It's specific, measurable, accountable, responsible, time bound, I think. I think I messed one of them up, right? I always mess up one of them, but
I got them wrong in a leadership offsite meeting when I was presenting about them. So yeah, I'll have to look it up again later.
Me too. I always mess, but again, the point is you should be thinking about things that are as objective as possible. Now, if it's a behavioral issue, that's something that is a little bit more difficult to do. But again, it's an important conversation to have to make it clear what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in the workplace, right? I mean, I've had situations where people have been dating in the workforce, and again, that's always a tricky one. Because you don't want to get involved in people's home lives, but like when it then turns into a messy breakup and they still have to work together, right? Like these are difficult.
I did not hire someone's girlfriend because I was like, I'm not ready to do this, unfortunately, to my person. And I was like, I'm just not ready as a leader. I'm not going to be good enough to handle this for you, so I can't hire your girlfriend. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I always try to focus it on what are the professional implications here, right? What's the impact? Also, impact and intent are two very different things. I can have the right intent, but the impact that I create, it goes totally awry. So I need to be really careful, both in terms of when I build this improvement plan and when I talk it through with somebody, as well as understanding that their intent may have been different than the actual impact.
Got it.
That they had on someone. And this is also happens when I'm leading leaders. So when working with somebody who has a team and they may have done something that has caused a lot of chaos and confusion with the team with great intent. Their intent may have been terrific, but the impact is something that you need to be always on the lookout for and be aware of.
Do you always do an improvement plan before you let somebody
No.
No.
No. No. If you're stealing from the company, you're fired.
Okay.
Like there are certain things, if you're causing such an egregious violation of company values or of the, certainly legal ones too. And again, check with your lawyers, right? Like I'm not an attorney. I don't speak for one. Like I'm not an expert in the HR law for your particular jurisdiction. So always take these things with a grain of salt. And I'll get to that actually around the next slide, which is like making sure that you're staying in legal compliance. Like this is incredibly important. So, you got to know what your local, state, and federal laws are. I'm not even going to talk about the EU or other, I'm literally just talking about US stuff right now. And every state is different. And even inside of states, different localities are different. But you need to be at least aware of what is wrongful termination.
I see.
What are protected classes and how you have to treat people who are in protected classes differently. How to deal with like what happens when someone is a whistleblower or they're saying that you fired me in retaliation, right? So these are also, we could do like an entire thing just on those issues alone. And I would be the wrong person for you to bring in. Yeah. Like that's why I have an attorney who, and they have partners, right? So you definitely want to be consulting with an attorney as much as you can.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you're going to be letting somebody go, the more documentation that you have, the better. The more times that you have had clear sign off with the employee, right? Like you've said, yes, we've had this conversation. Yes, you've agreed to these certain things, right? So again, do you have to have documentation in all cases? No. This is all about protection so that, you can make sure that if this case goes in front of a court or goes in front of arbitration, that you've got the documentation. But as I said, one size does not fit all. So you need to consult with appropriate legal counsel.
Got it. So
on this.
Real quick on the documentation, what do you suggest? Do you just have a Google Doc, like a hidden folder or private folder in Google, and you have a Google Doc on each person, and when something happens, you just open it and make a note? How do you? I really didn't ask you how you document.
Yeah, it's actually a good idea. So it depends on whether they're like my direct report or not. Like I actually have with each of my direct reports that they actually have a document that they own and that they share with me that we can talk about like performance and improvements and so on and so forth, right? And that way it's a great way to kind of like stay in touch if they've got something that's going on, if there's something that they want to talk about before our one-on-one, like it's their document.
Yeah, okay.
And that takes a lot of the pressure off of me. Now, if it turns out that this is turning into an issue, then yeah, of course, you want to be able to have a private document that you can share with your HR people, if you have HR people, and legal counsel as well.
Okay, got it. Sorry. So back to legal. We need to talk to our attorneys before we want to fire somebody, or at least have talked to them about this.
And then as your organization gets larger, you want to make sure, like, am I being consistent? Am I holding people to standards? Or is this just about the subjective idea of, like, you know, do I like them? You got to be super careful about that stuff.
Okay.
And so much unconscious bias shows up here.
I can't even imagine. When you mention standards versus feeling, I'm like, I don't even... we do even have standards written down,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And sometimes it's in, like, you want to write this stuff in the job description.
Yeah.
I'm great at doing job ads, job recs, but, like, am I actually writing a job description? Like, what are the actual responsibilities for this person? Are they expected to travel?
Right.
If I hire somebody remotely and I don't tell them that we have quarterly offsites and that it is an expectation that they actually attend the offsites and then they don't, like, is that, you know, whose fault is that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? So again, these are some of the things that you just want to be really careful about. You want to make sure that you're doing right. You know, and absolutely, if somebody has made a complaint, you know, if they're, you got to talk to your legal counsel and make sure that you are handling things really, really, really carefully and that you're taking whatever their concerns are into account really, really seriously. So lots of legal thistles in this particular area, which is why documentation, focusing on objective standards, is so important here.
Can I ask a nitty-gritty question, which is, do you fire for cause when there has been? And the reason I ask that question is because in Canada, where I live, you are advised never to fire for cause because it just doesn't work. It's not worth it to even try. So so you just pay severance to everyone anytime, unless it's like theft or whatever. But where in your situations, do you attempt to fire with a cause?
I think it's so individual. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
The short answer is yes. Like, there are reasons to fire with cause.
Got it.
Would I say it's uncommon but not rare?
Okay, that makes sense. Whenever I've talked to lawyers about it, they're just like, don't even try. Just pay severance. It's cheaper. And I'm like, okay, well.
I would argue that severance is actually, it is about taking care of people, like, especially if you get brought on early on, or, like, you know, you've made a big change, like you've moved, or, you know, like there's also, or, you know, it's long years of service with the company, right? You want to make sure that people are taken care of. If this is a performance issue, though, what severance and any kind of separation agreement is getting you is protection from lawsuits, really.
Yep.
Right? And this is different for executives, where you might have a severance clause that's already built in versus an employee who may not have that. No one likes losing a job. It's a major emotional event.
Yeah.
But if there's reason that, like, this should be ended, there, you know, you don't have to necessarily pay them out. What the severance will give you is a little bit of peace of mind, because along with the severance is what they call a general release, right? And make sure that your lawyer writes this, right? Like, you do not want to be writing this, you know, that like they are releasing, there'll be like something in there talking about how they're releasing you from all claims, you know, past, present, and future, blah, 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 right? So that they can't come, that in agreement for us paying you this money, which we're going to call severance, you are giving the company a release so that you can't come back to the company later with various claims.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And it's an agreement. And therefore, like, you can, by the way, if this is something that happens to you as an employee, understand that it's a business decision as well.
Well, and you can, as an employee, you could probably negotiate a release.
Correct.
So that's good.
Even if they don't offer it.
If they don't offer, you can say, "Look, I'll give you a release if." And I've seen this only in bigger businesses, maybe like plus 50 employees is where I've seen these. Maybe a bit less, but definitely more.
In general, and I think that there's a misconception or a mistake that is often made where people talk about the company with a family analogy, and I used to talk like that. A company's not a family.
Yeah.
It's not a family. They're a business. And so part of that is understanding that as a business, they're going to have to make business decisions. And, you have the ability to make decisions to move on and so on. And that payment at the end of your period of employment it's a contractual transaction that occurs. Even if it's not offered to you, you can very often go back and say, well, you know what, like, I'm not willing to sign this thing unless X, Y, and Z, right? And so that's a whole other set of conversations. Yeah.
So we talked about red flags and how to spot them. We talked about the improvement plan, which in most cases we'll do. We talked about talking to your lawyer. Oh, did you say how to have the conversation?
Yeah, let's talk. Let's do that one real quick.
Yeah.
Here we go. So yeah, how to have the conversation. So first, if you can do it in person, do it in person. I know it sucks. No one I know likes conflict.
Especially
it's an emotional experience. So you want to come in, number one, it's about preparation. So you got to make sure that you've got all your paperwork done, in place, locked in, right? So, here in the United States, we have, company provided health insurance in most cases, right? So, things like COBRA and, if there's severance, like the severance agreement and, all of that. And plus, you just want to have something that is literally writes out, like, this is what is going on. This is what is happening.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And by the way, it's not a negotiation. If you're at that point of conversation, they will, and I've had this conversation too, where like, I've been like, wait, is this a done deal? Or is this a conversation we're having?
Okay.
And if you are at that point where you are, you by the way, bring a witness, ideally somebody from HR.
Okay.
Because you don't want to, if you
and if you don't have, let's say if you don't have an HR department, who would you still bring a witness or maybe
sure.
record it or something?
If you have someone who can be a reasonable, a reasonable third party observer, you don't want to bring in that person's boss or their, or their report necessarily, right? But if you're just bringing in somebody else, right, who your COO or somebody who is, another member of the executive team or, so on and so forth. Right? Doesn't have to necessarily be the head of HR. But again, look, if you can't get a witness and you got to do it, you do it.
Okay.
Like this is all about like mitigating legal risk, right? Like it's at this point, it's about doing something kindly, doing it directly, and being brief.
And so, can you give us just maybe a quick scripting points for that conversation? Because I know that every time I have to do this, I will go to Claude and be like, Claude, what do you think? Or whatever, because I hate it.
By the way, those aren't bad. Like AIs are actually really good for this kind of thing. Again, you want to make sure to run it by somebody in legal just to make sure. But I'll give you a high level template.
Sure.
Right. And again, I'm going to assume that this is not like a violation of company values. This is like performance related, which is most of the time, right? So I would say something like, Bob, Sally, whatever, right? We've had conversations about expectations and your improvement, but unfortunately, we just haven't seen the necessary progress, and so we've made the decision to terminate your employment effective today.
It's to the point, simple,
very clear. Right, and it's not personal, right? You want to say you might want to say we want to thank you for your time here, right? I'm giving you a set of documents that actually outline, what post termination is, what's going to happen post termination, boom, 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 right? Please take the time to read them over. If you have any questions, you can get back to me, or you can get back to Joe, Bob, Sally, whatever, our head of HR who's here, whatever, right? And like, we want to make this transition as, easy as possible for you and for us. Do you have, and thank you for your service, something as simple as that, right?
Well, thank you. I think we're at time here. So, now I really feel like I have, do you have one more thing?
The only thing that we shouldn't forget about is their team.
Okay.
Right? Because, dealing with team aftermath is something that I think we so often forget about. That, the team may feel like, wait, what happened here? This was arbitrary. What's been going on? Or, like they may want to know, oh, what really happened? Like, okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, you want to be watching for things like rumors or anxiety or even silence, right?
I've caused
Like,
anxiety, yep.
right? Will I be next?
Yep, I've had that one, yep.
That's an important question. So can you tell the team? What do you tell the team, right? So, hey, we parted ways with Bob due to a mismatch in expectations. We wish them well, right? And yes, that termination is effective today. But don't overshare on details. But so just remember, like, and I'm not even just talking legal, like there are some legal things here, but like, how would you want to be treated if you were let go? Right? And that's the important thing to remember. So you want the other people to know what's going on, what's happening, what are the facts, but you want to be protective of the dignity of the former employee as well. And then you want to address the morale, right? So you can create a space for questions or one-on-ones or team meetings. And especially the more that they are related, not just say as a teammate, but if they're like their manager or their leader, right? Dealing with those kinds of things. And this thing will take care of itself if you are consistent in values and standards and reinforce what are the behaviors that are valued and why.
Got it.
And again, you don't need to like point this person out as a scapegoat,
No.
but you need to be talking about, hey, we value integrity here at this company, right? And making sure that we are clear. We value accountability at this company, and so you got to make sure that what you say you're going to get done, you get done, or we're talking about it and we're making change, right? Like whatever that is, you can use this as an opportunity to help people understand what happened and why.
Well, I think I now know how to fire someone, well, how to first spot it, and I know how to fire somebody in a way that I don't think I did before this call. Like I definitely learned some things, so thank you so much. Dave, what are you working on right now, and how do people get in touch about it?
Oh, so I have been working on a really fun company called Warmstart. And what Warmstart does is we help the warm outreach problem that so many company founders, digital agencies, wealth managers, real estate professionals, like so many people, anybody who deals with the relationships all the time, like you have a wealth of leads and opportunities and people who know you and already love you, who you have not talked to in a really long time.
Yeah.
And what does Warmstart do? Like, so we actually go in, we actually bring in all of your old email conversations. And so for every single human being who you've ever interacted with, we actually create a custom briefing of your relationship with them, what you guys did, what you talked about, what projects you worked on. And then we'll go out and find their recent social media, their LinkedIn, maybe they changed jobs. Maybe that former intern or that former vendor is now a VP somewhere. And then you can build AI-created outreach campaigns where we actually learn how you write by looking at how you've sent things in the past and build customized, personalized email drafts. You get 10 to 15 of them every morning when you wake up. And there's like, if you've ever seen Glenn Ross, like one of our customers said, Dave, it's like I got the Glengarry leads. You go in, nothing ever gets sent without your explicit permission.
Okay.
You go in, and in 15 minutes a day, you come in, you edit, you make a little change. Sometimes you want to be passive aggressive and you delete. Like, sure. Totally cool, right? And get your outreach done and get your day started. And what we're seeing is that most of our customers who actually do this for 15 minutes a day, every single one of them has seen a 300 to 400% ROI in terms of new deals that come in, new contacts, new relationships that are coming in that pay for the cost of the service and then some, right, within 3 months or less. So to me, it's about how to use AI to help remind us of the humans that we know and love and we just don't think about because we're so caught in our tunnel sometimes.
That is such a problem for me. I have a terrible memory and I always forget to follow up with people. Friends too, actually. I would like to sign up. Is there a link that I'll put the link in, obviously, in the podcast and show notes and everything, but I want the link to, what's the website? What's the URL?
It's Warmstart.ai.
Simple. That's incredible. Anything else you'd want to add about that before we sign off?
And since we just launched, we're actually doing a launch special. So it's only $99 a month until you actually close enough business that it has paid for itself. And then it switches back to its regular price of $349 a month.
Insane. Okay. Amazing. That's so cool. Okay. Well, Dave, this has been really, really great. I can't thank you enough for breaking this down. I know more about it than I did before. Yeah. Thank you.
Entirely a pleasure, Matt. And if anybody who's listening to this and is going through this process, because it's so difficult and there's, so much anxiety and angst that comes from being the person who has to go through this, just know you're not alone, and that there are many others who have been through this before, and that you can do this. It's actually an element of giving both yourself, the company, and the former employee the dignity of being able to find the right match.
Makes sense. Amazing.